Okay, these breach conversations are always so depressing because they're just never going to end.
Never.
We're going to have microchips in our wrists soon. That'll be our pass key.
And then they'll get hacked.
Made Daily. Hello and welcome to the Made Daily podcast. I'm John Michael Thomas.
And I'm Pierre Hageman.
Made Daily covers our favorite stories from tech to social media.
Our expert thoughts and opinions about information security, website design, and development.
And other random stories from the internet. This week's episode of the Made Daily podcast is still made possible by our friends Cinemechanics, the premier cinema, camera, and lens rental house. When you're shooting your next film, commercial, or popular streaming platform TV series, get a hold of Cinemechanics and they'll make sure your project stays next level.
The Made Daily version 5, the all-in-one secure website builder with built-in data collection tools and secure customer portals.
And today, our way back internet favorite, which I just learned about, Twitch Plays Pokémon. All right, Pierre, good to see you. First story of the day. Tech news story. Nearly 10% of employee Gen AI prompts include sensitive data. This is coming from CSO Online. But, so break it down for us.
Well,
what's going on?
It's bound to happen, right? So, I mean, you know what's going to happen. So what they're saying is that when you look through the prompts that are being sent to these large language models like ChatGPT, Microsoft's Copilot, Gemini, that's the Google one, Claude, there's a bunch of them now. They're finding that a lot of them are containing sensitive information, such as personally identifiable. We've talked about that a lot before, PII, customer data, but even stuff like authentication, passwords. We're talking about penetration test results, so they're like security testing results or findings, and so that's not very good. That's not too bad.
No. 10%, not a lot, but still bad.
Well,
because any of that's bad.
I mean,
basically
10% is a lot, right? That's 1 out of every 10 queries. And if you figure there's millions of queries that are going in, that's hundreds of thousands of sensitive pieces of information that are being fed into these AIs, which are controlled by companies that aren't necessarily friendly to the company where you're working, right? They may be a competitor or, generally competitive or adversarial.
I was actually thinking about this because I like using ChatGPT for coming up with like creative ideas and analyzing text, and it's a pretty interesting tool, to say, hey, how does this read? And then it'll tell you, maybe you want to change it this way. You can tell it to change the tone of something. But I was having that sort of thing of like, is this even worth using? Because ultimately you're just giving them a bunch of stuff. So it causes this becomes a true question about copyright, right? If you're using AI to write like a film or, something that you could copyright, is it even copyrightable at that point? That's a gray area right now.
I think it is. My counterpoint to that would be, so AI is like a gigantic blender, right? It's taking all of the written text that these companies can scrape legally or illegally, if you read about the thing that Meta was doing. And they take all this and they mash it up and they make a statistical model that says this word should follow this word in this context, right? So basically it's a mediocrity engine, right? Anything that you're getting out of it is the statistical average, right? So you can't really get better than average quality of data, which might be better than what you could write yourself, right? If you're, don't have time or potentially not a good writer. But if you're a script writer, there's no way AI is ever going to write something better than you could write yourself. So I would
I
say
agree with you.
don't
Mm-hmm.
don't if you need AI to write something for you, then maybe hire somebody who would be good at that, and then you'll get
Well,
something of higher
yeah, I mean,
quality.
I've talked to screenwriters and asked this question of them, like, do you use AI? And they're like, yeah, it's really great to like look at like how many ways could a person die in this scenario? Like, give me 50 different ways a person could die. And then they're using it to like, I didn't think about the chainsaw version,
Mm.
like using it as launching points for inspiration, which, is no different than when you used to like go to the library and just start paging and paging and paging and paging through books, you know. So
Yeah,
in that regard, it's an amazing tool in that regard to get back, like, you know ways to inspire you to kind of move forward. But I totally agree with you that um it's a little tricky to know where the line is, and it's very alarming to see that people don't, like a lot of things, they don't understand the impacts of, like, why, in the back to the article, like, why would you, how and why people are probably just uploading documents and asking for analyzation of documents, and they're leaking information. And that also just goes back to what's going on in that company where that information is readily available for people to even upload into AI.
well, and it's worse than that though, because the AI vendors are soliciting this with all of, like, Google is
True,
constantly saying, summarize this, give me,
true.
and then when the summary comes back incorrect, right? What do you do then? But like, yeah, and when it's saying summarize this document that contains sensitive information, I'm not sure it's clear to people that this is being transmitted across the internet to this company. It's being processed by their systems, and then the synthesis is being sent back to you, which is an exposure of that
Right,
data, right?
right.
Yeah,
I mean, that's let's go down like some of the things that aren't even true AI. Grammarly, checking your words,
mm,
using it for spell check. That goes out to a cloud service, tells you if your, words are spelled correctly. Now it gives you suggested artificial intelligence ways of rewriting your
well,
sentences, right?
Grammarly also has some major leakage issues and security problems. We should
Hmm.
do a completely separate episode just about that.
Hmm.
But yeah, Grammarly has some problems. Um, Gemini and Copilot are particularly egregious because they are both actively um, sniffing or reading data as soon as you open files, right?
So Gemini is
It's Google's.
Google's, and Copilot is Microsoft's.
Correct, yeah.
Yep.
So when you open a Word document and it says, oh, summarize this,
Right.
you know
Well, and even, I mean, the other thing is, for all the years, for so many years, Gmail, we knew Gmail was scanning our email to give us ads, right?
mhm.
And so now they're just continuing to do that to give you prompts for AI, and the end result is, what is that ultimately doing for them? They're basically building a giant large language model off of everybody's email, and then they could spill over into docs you have uploaded, docs you have created, um, which you hope that these companies kind of toe the line a little bit in helping protect the business, but we've seen too many stories where that's not the case.
Yeah, I think for larger organizations, the answer is going to ultimately be just to block the tools, unless Microsoft always and will continue to um, put together master service agreements with large companies to say, here's where data will be processed. And so Microsoft is going to do that. I don't know if they're doing that now, but they absolutely will. Google probably, they're a little bit looser in my experience with the the data that is provided by their customers. They're pretty tight with their own data, um, but I think things like ChatGPT or Claude or DeepSeek, the
Mm-hmm.
Chinese one,
Mm-hmm.
the companies are just going to end up blocking them
Mm-hmm.
in the same way that they block um, the file sharing services like Dropbox or
Mm-hmm.
Box.com, except for the one that's approved
Mm-hmm.
and has been vetted by their security team for the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with
And
smaller businesses, that gets harder, right? Because
mm-hmm.
you don't necessarily have that level of control over your employees.
Right. So small business, doesn't get to go into an executive level contract with even like with the Chat GPT to make sure that their data is walled off and isn't being used for certain things. I mean, so there is some of that. So if what I guess if people are using AI, businesses are using it, what are some best practices to try to avoid giving and feeding it sensitive data?
Yeah. So, first off, I would say if it's possible, right, and it's getting harder and harder, but turn off the automatic AI stuff in your
Right.
documents, in your email. Um, that's step one that I would recommend. And then just be cognizant when you're using these tools, make sure that you're not, uploading documents that contain, say you want a summary or say you want, analysis across multiple documents. Make sure that if it did contain financial information or customer information, you scrub that out before you send it. Just be aware that these are third party, external companies that are running these bots, and they're not necessarily secure. That's possible. OpenAI recently had a data breach. DeepSeek has had a data breach within days of
Yeah.
being released. So you don't assume that that data is going to be
Right.
held securely. So,
Right.
so then, and finally, I would say, I think just stick to what you were saying earlier. Let's just use it as a writing prompt, or use it as like a give me some ideas for this, and don't don't rely on those bots for critical business operations. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. I need 50 headlines for this web banner.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff's good. I doing math problems, helping with some complicated math problems could be
Well,
kind of good. Good.
as long as it's right, they do tend
Yeah,
to
that's true.
hallucinate answers.
Like
So
the
double
classic,
check.
hey, I gave a bunch of citations for my law response, and all the citations were fake.
Yeah.
I guess I would add one thing for best practices, which is, and big corporations do this. I know this from working in big corporations. There's like, intellectual property training and keeping information private and where to do it. Start including that in your employee training. Come up with parameters and policies around when AI is appropriate to use and not appropriate to use. And then I do think your advice to like just turn all that stuff off
Mhm.
until the people are trained properly to use it, and then it's probably going to be okay. It's going to be around forever now, so I haven't yet had a chance to dive into the video version of AI, but I found that very funny where you see like a bunch of little men like digging the spaghetti off of a plate. Like that stuff's sort of funny. Okay, moving on to a story that I experienced firsthand, which is this toll scam epidemic that is sweeping the world right now, and the FBI has issued warnings about a widespread smishing SMS phishing scam, which SMS is text, where cyber criminals impersonate toll agencies. And I got one of these that my Fast Track toll has toll to avoid the fine and keep your license, please pay at Express Pay. And I'm like, well, I don't use Express Pay, where I live. But I did have it one time where when I went on a road trip, I had a tollway in Illinois to get through to go out east, and I was like, this has got to be junk. But now I've heard stories of people who've actually fallen victim of this scam, went to pay the toll, put their credit card in, and so it's a pretty big, scary little thing.
Yeah.
And so what's happening with it? This is can you break down, Pierre, like what they're stealing?
Well, so at the end of the day, it's a phishing attack, and phishing is always a trust issue, right? Either your customers are trusting somebody they shouldn't trust, or they don't know who to trust because they've been trained, to click links that go to random URLs in the internet. And this is no different. I think it's a brilliant social engineering tactic because so many people across the country and across the world do use toll roads, right? Toll roads are everywhere. And so many of those toll roads now are being automated where you don't, it used to be you'd stop, you'd throw your coins in, and then you'd go, right? They're getting rid of all that for these scanners that you just drive through, and it tacks up your money and sends you a bill. So it's brilliant because so many people are subject to this. They can broadcast these texts that are completely fake, and and even if only 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 it is subject and falls victim to this, that's still, they're compromising bank accounts, credit cards, and whatnot. And combined with there's new techniques coming out of hackers from China where they're able to take stolen credit cards or bank accounts and turn them into like digital wallets, which can then be used online or at physical storefronts. So that's how, then they're just draining bank accounts, stealing money.
And they're pretty sophisticated too now, where they don't even have to take a lot of money. They just could take a little money from a lot of people. So a couple things that I kind of try to follow and try to tell people is, if you get a text or an email and you don't know where it's from, or you say, hey, this looks like my bank, you can go into your account. I got actually a different one. I just got one yesterday. I got a notice that I needed to sign a DocuSign. And I'm like, DocuSign? And the email was, I looked at the email address and it was funny. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll log into DocuSign under my account that I know. I didn't click any links in the email, logged into DocuSign. There was no DocuSign in there.
Right.
And I suspected that it was spam, but I wanted to validate it and check. And then I reported that. I marked that as a phishing email so Google can get it in the system and deleted it. And
email is actually almost easier because you can check things like that. The SMSs, they always come from unknown numbers, even if it's if it's a business that you're used to dealing with, and it makes it so hard to determine if something is legitimate. So my default is, and I recommend this to everybody, is never just assume it's not legitimate always, because if it is, say you do owe toll, or say you do owe your dentist money, they will have other ways of telling you that, right? You can call them, you can log into your toll account. Never ever click a link from a text unless it's something, even if it's like I was gonna say, unless it's something that's just informational, but even then I would say don't. If it comes, and again, I was going to say, if it comes from a friend of yours, but even then, it could have been spoofed. I would just say never click links that come to you from.
And if you accidentally click a link and it goes to a place where you're supposed to put more information in, get out of there.
Yeah, just don't.
Use the browser. And then like if it like this one said pay fast track link, well, you can go to fast track and look it up. And then I guess the other thing about text is, if you're getting them when you're legitimately doing something online, like signing into your bank, or logging into something. They're typically going to give you codes and two-factor, and you can assume those are legit. It's what, to your point, it's these random texts that come like out of nowhere.
Yeah. But then the thing to remember though with the two-factor and confirmations is they don't contain links, right? You're not
Right.
clicking on anything. That two-factor
Right.
is a number that you then are typing into the
Right.
website yourself. So yes, if you're logging into your bank and they send you a code, sure. But if you get a code that says click this to verify your bank login, don't do that. The only exception I think is Google. If you have their app, then when you try to log in, their app will say, is this you? Yes or no? Then sure, that's legitimate. But if it's coming in as a text or an email, don't trust it. Don't click it.
And the advice from the FBI is don't click, delete the text.
Yeah.
Same advice from Peer. And check the toll balances only through official sources. And if you received one of these texts, the FBI advises the following steps. File a complaint with the Internet Crime Complaint Center at ic3.gov. Be sure to include a phone number and websites used in the text. Verify your account through the toll services website. Delete any smishing text and secure personal and financial information you've interacted with the link.
So that means
you can
change
also
your
call
password.
the
Secure.
FBI's fraud hotline. Yep.
I don't like it when they say secure your personal information. Like, what does that mean? They mean change your password.
Change your passwords.
Right.
Yeah.
And
if you get a text saying, you get a random two-factor or random email and you were not doing something at that thing, change your password.
Change your password. Yeah. I think you can also usually most places, larger companies like your bank and Gmail and whatnot will tell you the last time that there was a login and the IP address, so you can look at the location to say, no, that's not me. Then I should probably change my password.
Yeah.
But
I got one of those recently too.
Yeah.
Random.
And passwords are exposed all the time. You can check to see if your password is exposed at haveibeenpwned.com. Though if you put your password in there, I would recommend changing it because it's a third party. Who knows if they're, that guy he's a smart guy and he's very security conscious. But again, if you're typing your password into somewhere else, I would just go ahead and change it. And use a password safe. Then you don't have to remember it. Just who can remember their passwords these days?
No, not when you have so many of them. Right. Okay, these breach conversations are always so depressing because they're just never going to end.
Never.
We're going to have microchips in our wrists soon. That'll be our pass key.
And then they'll get hacked. So it's good.
All right, let's talk about this Wayback element that I didn't know about. So Twitch Plays Pokémon. So it was a social experiment where 1.16 million users collectively controlled a single playthrough of Pokemon Red by inputting commands via Twitch chat, and it went on for 16 days. Pretty cool. I like this sort of stuff.
That was the original, and it was pretty early. I think Twitch started in like 2011, and this was in maybe a couple of years later. And it was such a cool thing because, it was very weird.
So for people who don't know what Pokemon is, explain Pokemon.
Well, Pokemon it's a Japanese, behemoth. If you don't know what Pokemon is, then I think you haven't probably, I don't know where you've been living, but I approve. Good. But if you do come out from your cave, there's this thing called Pokemon, which is a collectible card game, and I don't know how long it's been popular. My kids are obsessed with these cards, and so then it's created by Nintendo, And so then from the collectible card game, they spun off video games, and one of them was used by Twitch to, and you go around and you collect your Pokemon, and you got to collect them all, and you train them up, and you battle them. And so they were crowdsourcing the playthrough of the game, and and it went on for quite a long time. Apparently, I was looking, the last one was in like 2018.
And it looks like it just went. I mean, it got very complex, and it got really chaotic. And then the people playing introduced a democracy mode to allow only majority voted commands to be executed, because it would seem like it was just a free for all for a while. And then they, it's kind of fun. It's fun that this stuff happens.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Did you ever play Pokemon Go?
I played it briefly with my kids. They like it, but
I remember when that came out, and I was and I played it a little bit, like in the neighborhood or whatever. And I remember going, we had to go to Target to go shopping for something, and I'm like, what are all these people standing outside Target for? And that dawned on me, there was like 25 people out there looking at their phones because it was a Pokemon hotspot, right? So funny. Okay, well, that's it for today. Unless we got more security stuff. Well, there's a lot of that lately, and we'll be talking about that again in the next episode. So thanks again for joining us today. If you want to check out any of the stories or topics we covered, head over to maydaily.com/blog. We've got a lot of awesome story recaps there. So if you want to track any of these way back elements, you can see them there. And please, if you have a story you'd like to share or a site you'd like us to review, leave us a comment.
And do not forget to subscribe. Click the button. Click the bell, all the things.
You can follow us on Twitter, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, and the YouTubes. And we're going to start a Substack soon. Substack 2. Till next time.
Stay secure.
Made Daily.